5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, everyone, to the special business meeting of the Council of the Borough of Ringwood, held today, Friday, March 29th, at the Violet Bogart Municipal Annex. Statement of compliance, please.
Adequate notice of this special meeting has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Law, PL 1975, Chapter 231, setting forth the time, date, place, and purpose of this special meeting by Mayor Jim Martucci pursuant to NJSA 40-69A 179, through notices emailed to the following named newspapers and posted on the bulletin board at Borough Hall on March 25th, 2019. The Suburban Trends and the Bergen Record.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mayor Martucci?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Noonan?
Here.
Council members Bolton?
Here.
Davison?
Here.
Ferretti?
Here.
O'Keefe?
Here.
Spear?
Here.
Also present is Borough Manager, Director of Public Works, Scott Heck, Acting Municipal Clerk, Nicole Langemeier, Borough Attorney Richard Klimek, and Deputy Buchanan, CFO. And we're also televising on Channel 77. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. First order of business is general public comment. Anyone wishing to come up, please come up to the microphone.
Hey folks, I'm Jim Martin, Marshall Road. The budget is a really serious issue, and after attending and watching the last couple of meetings, you having trouble? Just for the recorders. Just for the recorders. I find it concerning to hear words like financial death spiral and the like. These are good economic times right now. What if they weren't? It wasn't too long ago that we had some very hard times in this country. And if you look at a lot of the leading indicators, it could return again fairly soon. Within 18 to 24 months, we could have a very different economy than we have today. While I can understand there's a certain prudence to retiring debt, to touch our entire reserve fund when we're not even really sure it's all clean right now, that we can touch it, I think is very risky. I think that we shouldn't be rushing to raid that monies, because we could need those monies. If we spend it all now by retiring that debt in order to keep taxes low for 1 year, you have nothing left. The town starts living paycheck to paycheck. It's a very dangerous situation. Right now, the Fed keeps rates low. All interest rates are affected by that. Municipal borrowing is affected by that. If they were to change course because the economy changes course, this could become very expensive for this town. I urge you to leave the reserve fund intact the way it is now, and we need to explore other ways to make sure that that reserve fund is not jeopardized. So having said all of that, I think it's also a little concerning that at this late hour, we're crafting a 5-year plan. A 5-year plan should have been crafted 3 to 5 years ago, not between, oh my God, there's a problem with the budget and we can raid the reserve fund. It's critical to preserve that and act in the best interest of the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to get up? See no one?
Seeing no one, I'll move to close public.
Second.
Roll call.
Mayor Martucci?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Noonan?
Yes.
Council members Bolton?
Yes.
Davison?
Yes.
Ferretti?
Yes.
O'Keefe?
Yes.
Spear?
Yes.
Okay. Resolutions.
First of all, Mayor, we always do a multi-year budget. This isn't the first year that we've done it. We did a multi-year revenue budget for the Finance Committee this year. This is the first time we've brought 2 budgets to a budget introduction because there was some, the Finance Committee didn't come to terms with a budget. So we brought two this evening, but we've always looked at multi-year budgets in the past. We are looking at the revenue stream because obviously 2 years ago when the reservoir tax appeal phased in over a 3-year period, $15 million reduction, obviously you have to budget for that. We always chart, and as you can see from all the budget figures that I've given you over the years, I'll bring budget numbers and projections and revenues and so forth, going back to 2004. So I always have it going all the way backwards, so you hear the historical data. We have the debt ratio going up, out into, as you can see, I don't know, 26 or something, whatever I had in that chart. So we look at multi-year plans. So it's not really accurate to say that this is the first year we're all of a sudden doing a long-term budget. We're looking at it very carefully, and we're doing it on a line item by line item basis to address what we see as problems, and the Finance Committee has done this with us this year as well as they've done for many years. Also keep in mind that this is the first year that you can retire the debt because the bonds couldn't be retired until they reached their 10-year life. So we watch the spikes and the drops in the debt, and we try to keep the debt payments and interest level. We try to do that so that you don't all of a sudden have 1 year where you have significant payments and the next year where you have none or so forth. So we watch that. So this evening, we just have a few resolutions, and I apologize for a Friday night meeting. When we met with the Finance Committee, we originally were planning on a Tuesday meeting. I think the Finance Committee, with myself and Debbie, came to the realization that we probably could use a couple extra more days to work on some of the issues and to present the budget, and that's why we have a Friday night meeting. It's not something that I've ever think we've done before, but we want to try to introduce before the 31st, which is a requirement. We try to get that done in accordance with the DCA standards. If we don't get it done this night, we don't get it done tonight, but we wanted to get it done and try and meet that deadline so that when we do our best management practices report, that's one of the things that we're introducing in that time period is one of the things you get points for. So we obviously try to get as many points as we possibly can. So my voice is not back yet, so I'll try to be as brief as I can. Hopefully all of you can hear me. For the first thing on the agenda this night is the approval of bills. This is 2019-89. Whereas the Chief Financial Officer has certified funds are available for the current bill list in the amount of $70,581.59 to be credited to the following accounts for that same total.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mayor Martucci?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Noonan?
Yes.
Councilmembers Bolton?
Yes.
Davison?
Yes.
Moretti?
Yes.
O'Keefe? Yes. Spear?
Yes.
And every year, 2019-90, this is authorization to use a higher tax collection percentage in 2019 so as to reduce the property taxes in 2019. What happens is we have to average out the last 15, 16, and 17, what our tax collection is, and you come up with an average, I think come out with 98.79%. Whereas the mayor and council believe that the best interest of the citizens of the borough to use a higher tax percentage of the calculation and experience in 2018. The aforementioned 98.4, they've computed in 19 for the tax reserve. So now therefore be it resolved, the mayor and council, that permission has requested for the director of local finances to permit the borough to anticipate a tax collection of 98.79 plus or minus for the year ending 12/31/19. The average of the 3 prior years. So this is a resolution that we do pretty much every year, right, Mr. Klimek?
Yes, we do.
And that has to be done before we can introduce a budget.
Can I get a motion?
I'll move it.
Second.
Roll call.
Mayor Martucci?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Noonan?
Yes.
Councilmembers Bolton?
Yes.
Davison?
Yes.
Moretti?
Yes.
O'Keefe? Yes. Spear?
Yes.
Before we get into the budget discussion, first of all, I want to thank the Finance Committee and John, who started the Finance Committee last November. We've talked a lot about a lot of different things this year. We've gone through a lot of different exercises. We spent some time going through a whole variety of scenarios, and you know, it's not something that anybody on this committee has taken lightly. Mr. Freddy's new to the committee this year, and you know, everybody put the time in, and everybody, while they don't always have the same, we have interesting meetings because we don't all have the same opinions. Everybody puts the effort in and comes up with something that they think is in the best interest of the community. Over the past several years, I've spoken a lot about the need to increase our rateable base and the revenues so that we can provide some relief to, let's face it, taxpayers are overburdened. There's also no doubt that no community can survive without some type of slow and steady increase in revenue. That's just, our personal budgets are the same, the borough is the same. I've talked about the budget problems and that we were at a crossroad, and unfortunately, as I've said before, we're facing those because some of those predictions have come true. And while we're not in a crisis point, it's not like this is a crisis, we're not in that point where where it's doom and gloom. My job is to advise the council of the financial situation before it becomes a crisis, and that's why we've been talking so much about it over the last year or so. Debbie and I have taken actions, and the council's taken actions over the last few years to reduce the staffing through attrition. We've cut expenses, and we're running our operation very lean here. You know, ironically, last week, an elderly resident was in paying her taxes and asked to speak to me. You know, they do that often, so I came down to talk to her. And she said she watches the council meetings and that anyone who wasn't aware of the budget problems hasn't been paying attention. So I was kind of surprised at that. So she said, yes, we've heard you talk about it. And she wanted me to know that taxes were a burden, but every time she calls or comes to Borough Hall, the employees listen, they care about her problem, and they help her to solve the problem. And she said, please keep that in mind when I'm thinking about cutting the budget. So, and then she said, you know, in her fashion, I know you'll figure it out and I'll be watching. So there's no pressure there, right? She's gonna be back, I'm sure. But I think it's worth, I think everybody knows it, but I think it's worth saying anyway, because our department needs to hear it as well. Obviously, our police and fire and ambulance respond to emergencies and throughout our community, and they're a vital part of our town. And everybody recognizes that. I mean, let's be honest, our emergency services are very important. But without the public works clearing the streets and maintaining the vehicles, addressing resident complaints, drainage, road hazards, emergency services certainly couldn't do their jobs effectively. Without our building and health department, that also keep our community and the environment safe, ensuring that the residents and the people that visit our parks in the commercial district are also protected. They play a vital role as well. And of course, none of this would be possible without our finance department, who pays the bills and, yes, collects the taxes and pays the employees to do these services for our community. The clerk's office keeps all the official records, the historical data, and another crucial part. Water department provides drinking water for our community, also very important. Recycling and garbage department ensures that our garbage is collected each week, and it's a really a public service. The recreation department and our library, both of those are different, but still very important because they run great programs for our youth, to our seniors, and of course, they're assisted by the Parks Department. So I guess what I'm saying is each one of these departments play an integral role, and I know everybody knows that, but I think it's important for us to be reminded of that occasionally. They play an integral role in the services that people deserve and they've come to be accustomed to. And these services also help to play a role in the value of your homes. Your homes, most people's homes are the most significant thing that they'll ever invest in. Not everybody, but most people. So with that in mind, cutting services, in my eyes, was not really a good option. So I looked for alternative solutions to offset the reduction in revenue that, and I wanted to provide the council the opportunity over the next 5 years to plan a viable option to replace that declining revenue. Now, we heard earlier that plugging a one-year budget is not a great option, but that's not what we're doing here tonight. The plans that we've talked about are removing debt forever. Like if you pay that debt off, it doesn't only affect next year, it affects the following year and the following year and the following year. As a matter of fact, I think you save $445,000 in interest, and the payments are almost $3.2 million over the long term. So it's not really that you're just plugging a budget gap. You're taking your own money and you're buying down your debt. So I didn't think that was a good option, so I looked for alternate solutions to offset revenue that would provide us opportunity for the next 5 years to come up with some viable options because let's face it, we as a community need to come up with some options to figure out how we're gonna handle that, and there are options. The last council meeting, I presented a plan which in my opinion is viable and a fiscally conservative plan which reduces our budget by up to $700,000 a year for the next 5 years, and it will continue unless you replace that, obviously. Saves $445,000 in interest, pays off debt that we're currently paying up to 5.5% interest on, and it's utilizing funds that are earning 0.5% interest now. Essentially, you'll be self-funding your debt. I believe it provides the council the opportunity to have public input on options for revitalization, redevelopment, or any other revenue opportunities that come your way. It will not only benefit the borough, but it will also benefit the schools, which are going to see significant reductions in state aid over the next years. And that's not speculation, that's fact. Anybody who's been paying attention to what's going on in Trenton knows that the schools are going to lose significant funding. I think Lakeland this year lost maybe $2 million, I think. What's that?
No, not yet. I think it's gonna be $2 million to the $2 million to Lakeland over the next 7 years.
For the sector.
$1 million out of Ringwood in the next 7 years.
All of these things are just factual. It's something that's gonna happen, and we have to fund that. It also will provide some relief to some families that are struggling and some seniors that are finding it increasingly difficult to live here. My job is to look at the overall financial picture of the borough, provide services, and to create, to provide some creative solutions to problems and offer it for all of you to consider. And the Finance Committee has asked me to do some of these things, and that's why I did it. Debbie and I have projected budgets for the next several years and to assist the council in the multi-year plan so that they can determine a financial path forward, looking at those pictures and with those things in mind. We've also prepared 2 budgets for you folks to look at this evening. I know I peppered you with the paper this week on all the different options. Before you, you have the municipal budget, and Debbie was kind enough to put option B in this, but that does not mean that that's what you have to go with tonight. If in fact you choose the other option, we obviously will change those numbers accordingly, but there was no sense doing these 70 pages twice if in fact it was gonna change. I don't know, it's 45 pages. So, anyways, that's a snapshot of what we've done and where we are. I went through the financial plan last week with you, and I sent you guys all the budgets. So, with that, Mayor, I offer it to the committee to talk about, or however you want to proceed. The 2 options are as presented. Option A would be a budget going forward without a debt reduction, just paying the normal ordinary debt, and option B would be paying off that debt, and it shows you the projections for the next 3 years on this particular spreadsheet. Obviously, we have it stretched out further, but both options have been sent to all of you folks.
And what's the tax rate on each one of those?
Option A, and again, these are gonna depend upon some of the Chapter 159s, and as you know, when we actually get to adoptions, it slides $3 or $4 either way, based upon the actual revenues that come in the Chapter 159s. Like, as an example, we talked earlier, the $7,000 revenue that came in from the stigma-free, that we have to bring in as a Chapter 59 so that we can take that money and actually spend it, so that some of that stuff all changes all that. So that's these are just rough estimations based upon the auditor's snapshot in time today. The 2019 option number A has a total budget of $16,443,457.39 as outlined in your sheets. It is expected that the tax increase for this year would be $126.91. And out of what you received in March, this particular budget, as recommended by the committee, decreases the vehicle purchase for the DPW by $45,000, decreases the police purchase by $60,000, decreases the planning board by $20,000. That is for some of the COA planning and the lawsuit planning and so forth, in case we had to do ordinances. It increases the capital improvement fund by $30,000, because as you all know, we have to do a improvement to our James Drive sewer plant, but it doesn't affect the budget because there's some self-generated revenue in there that we were using for down payment money, so we took it out of the sewer plant reserve and added that as revenue. So that's really a wash in the budget, but we wanted to show you what the difference is in this particular budget. That would be option A. Option B is the debt reduction. In addition to the debt reduction, I also decreased the legal O&E by 15,000. I decreased the planning board by the same 20,000. I decreased group health insurance by 15. I decreased the police vehicles by only 15,000. Decreased streets and roads OE by 15. DPW by 45. Decreased building and grounds by 40. We decreased unemployment trust by 5,000, and we again increased the capital improvement fund 30,000. We added back in the celebration for public works, for public events. So I didn't feel right not making adjustments. There were things that we can do if, and Debbie and I felt confident that if in fact we could replace some of the items that we were taking out of the budget this year, next year, because we were gonna have debt reduction and our payments were gonna be down and our interest was gonna be down, we were gonna be able to fund those things fully next year, so we felt comfortable taking them out. If in fact in option A, we couldn't have the confidence that we were gonna refund them next year, we still need to have police cars, we still need to, remember your frontline police car, I think, is 65,000 miles a year. So you pay it one way or you pay it in maintenance another way. So those are the two options. That increase for 2019 is approximately $49.35. Again, that adjusts a couple dollars either way once the revenues are finalized. So those are the two options that are before you. I know we've talked about them a lot.
What was the total appropriations under option B?
Oh, I'm sorry, total appropriations, 16,443,000. That's option A,
That's A.
sorry.
Oh,
Sorry. Thought I heard that number before.
I didn't print that.
$16,418,457.39. It's approximately 30,000, I think, cheaper than the other one. The significant portion, the significant factor in option A and option B is the budgets in the years going out, because you don't have a debt reduction, you don't have a debt payment. So as an example, in 2020, option B, the budget projected is $16,335,000, whereas in option A, the budget projected is $17,077,000. So that's where the differences really lie in the outward. If we were to put this off to pay the debt reduction down next year, we would still have to appropriate the money. You can't pay it off without appropriating within the budget. We still have a requirement to do that. So this year it's appropriated in our budget as required by law. So next year we would have to do the exact same thing. So if in fact you're going to pay down the debt, the sooner that you pay down the debt, the better off all of you are going to be. So.
Well, we've been working on the budget really for 2 years, because we saw what happened last year after the reservoir tax bill. And what we could see was tax increases. We had tax increase last year. We knew we were gonna have a tax increase this year, and there was gonna probably be an even bigger one next year, because the effect of the appeal for the reservoir is even greater. And, you know, we were kind of nervous, because we were looking around for different ideas without cutting services anymore, and at the same time, not putting too much burden on the taxpayer. When the idea came to use some of this money, what it does, it helps the next 5 years. Now, some of this debt is old debt. Okay, it's bonds that were issued years ago. Okay, in some cases, the equipment or whatever that the bonds purchased no longer exist. They're broken, they're gone, they're done, but we're still paying for them. And it came through several different administrations. So what happens is, in the third year, this year, second year, okay, in the third year, the payment balloons into 200,000 more than we're paying now, and the following year it balloons also. So at that point, whatever administration is in here, okay, is gonna have a hard time, okay, working with financing it. And to try to restructure the debt, again, on stuff that is really not all here anymore, if you took an inventory, does make sense. So what this does, it reduces the taxes for the next 5 years. It avoids us from having to pay a big nut on the, what was it, 600,000?
The principal payments for just the one PCIA loan bonds, 2019 is 300,000, 2020 is 375,000, 2021 is 400,000, 2022 goes to 625,000, 2023 630,000, and it ends in 2024 at 642,000. The interest declines the other direction a little bit. 2019, it's $148,447. 2020, it's $135,697. 2021, it's $118,000. 2022, it's $98,000. 2023, it's $64,000. And 2024, it's $35,000 in interest. So the total interest paid on that one bond is $601,547 in the next 5 years. The other bond only has 3 years left, and the interest on that is $33,875 and no cents.
Now, the one thing, one mystery we haven't solved yet or agreed on is how to increase revenue. That's not gonna happen in the next couple months. It's probably not gonna happen within the next year or so. It's something that we're gonna struggle with, and we're gonna have to come to some sort of reality in terms of bringing revenue into the town to pay for the services. What this does, again, gives whatever council's in place time and room to be able to brainstorm that, provided the CFO uses a big ruler and slaps their hands. So, I think it's a good way to go. I think it protects citizens. I think it prevents us from paying unnecessary interest and principal, and clears the road for us. And at the same time, will help our bond rating by muni, et cetera. And should it come down the road, we can always have the ability on an emergency basis to seek out any bonds. Right?
I mean, firstly, I have to thank Scott and Debbie for all the work putting together 2 budgets for what I believe is at least the first time in recent memory, if ever. And that was a lot of work, and appreciate that that they invested the time and energy to fully illustrate all of our options. It's a difficult decision. It's not an easy topic. I think one of the questions that I would have regarding option B and the forecasted figures in the spreadsheet is whether or not they already reflect paying back into the capital reserves, or that line item is not there yet. So that would be, like, those forecasts don't account for trying to make room to rebuild those cash supplies.
No, we left the debt payments at
As
zero because you
we-
paid it off, and that would be a council option year after year. One of the things that we talked about is you could decide to put half of it back each year, you could decide to put all of it back each year. If you, once you replace the revenue, you could take that line item, at 700,000 or 800,000 a year, depending upon what it is, and you could refund that account if you so chose. You also could, if in fact something, if for some reason you wanted to make a capital investment of some kind, or you needed the funding, we're borrowing at less than half of the rate of what we're paying now. And keep in mind, when you borrow, if in fact you were to go and borrow $3 million today, we would do bond anticipation notes, you'd be paying really only interest. Now, Debbie and I pay interest and principal, we don't just pay we always encourage to put down some debt as well. But your first payment wouldn't be for 2 years or 3 years out. So, again, you have that mechanism that would give you the ability to be able to do that. But no, we didn't, in those years out, make that decision. That's a council decision, really.
And that makes sense. I just wanted to make sure I was not
We
making
talked,
any assumptions.
you and I talked about that at length. We could refund it if we so chose. You'd be self-liquidating your own debt, and you could put it back, you could pay yourself.
Obviously, predicting the future is probably the hardest job, any capacity. In the hypothetical that we did not go with option B, and were to take it up next year for the 2020 budget, essentially what we would be forfeiting from a benefit standpoint would be the interest for 2020. If I'm understanding correctly, because we would be still paying off the interest for the future years, 21 through 24. 2019 we have to pay anyway, but it's really that big 136 swing. That would be the difference between implementing the plan this year versus next year. Is that fair?
Well, you wouldn't be paying, in option A, you'd be paying principal and interest.
Correct.
Yeah, whereas in option B, you're not paying, you've already paid that for next year.
Wait, what did we already pay for next year? Sorry, I thought it was
In
wrong.
option A, the debt payment doesn't, you just make your regular scheduled debt payment. So in other words, in 2020, you'd pay 145 for the one bond and 11, I don't know if you have this sheet with you, but the sheet that I gave you the other day, you'd be paying all those interest payments in 2020. In option B, you wouldn't be, because you would have already paid them in October of this year. That's the difference. The real difference between the budget is, we cut a couple dollars out because we knew we could fund some things next year, that we could put off some of those purchases, so that we were reducing our debt as well as reducing our budgetary items. Whereas in the option A, we didn't have that same comfort level, so we didn't cut some of those things back as much. And the only difference there is the debt principal payment and interest reduction. Is that correct?
Yes.
Not gonna make it, but
I think my general philosophy and preference, I definitely value all of the services that come out of this building and all the people that go towards creating that, and I want to see those services continue at a consistent level, and the people who do them continue to do them for as long as they'd like to. And so I'm not interested in dialing back services or reducing the value that we give people for their taxes. I do wish that we had the idea sooner. I shouldn't say we. I wish that the idea had been presented sooner, so that we had more time to socialize it and gain input from the town. That's I think it's a big decision that I would rather have had a few months to talk about around the table, and that's just not the luxury that we have for this budget year, unfortunately. And so I think that is probably part of my greatest discomfort around tapping the funds, because we have that cushion now, and personally, individually, I would, if tapped, be in favor of working towards a plan that would, once we have the sources of revenue in place, replenish it.
Right.
Not knowing who would be making those decisions or how strong that commitment would be to replenish those funds, I would feel a little bit like I was grabbing from the piggy bank. Even though that's not the intention, and that's not the connotation, so it's not the right metaphor to use, but that's how I would feel if I was doing it, just individually. So I think that's kind of the current state of my head.
The reason that we, as we were talking through the budget, I kept talking to the council about, listen, in order to benefit the years out, we have to get rid of reoccurring debt, or reoccurring expenses. That's what we started talking about at the Finance Committee. I said, if you don't get rid of reoccurring and you get rid of one-time debt, you're going to compound your problem next year. So as we were looking at these things, and the bonds weren't really something, I was looking originally at instead of, last week we rolled over BANs, bond anticipation notes. And originally I was looking at those as well, okay, maybe we'll reduce those and we won't roll those over. But some of them are at 1%, some of them are at 2.2, so they're between 1 to 2.7, I think, percent. So, and that didn't make that wasn't as much of a benefit to the budget. And then I asked her to pull the boxes on the 2009 general refunding, and let me look through that. And I was home sick that week, so I had plenty of time to sit there and go through all that stuff. And I read through all those bonds, and when I realized what we were paying on these things in terms of interest, because that was done long ago, and the debt payment schedule, the way the banks structured their payments, it was really going to affect us in the outward years. So when you broke them all down, it became very apparent that, listen, if you want to get rid of reoccurring expenses, you can do it one of two ways. You can get rid of employees, or you can get rid of some type of debt, or you can get rid of lease payments, or you can get rid of whatever those structures are. So while it would have been great to have talked about this a while ago, we were talking about for quite some time getting rid of the reoccurring debt. It's just when this all, when we talked about it more at the committee meeting, that's when I delved into it deeper. And you couldn't have recast these notes until this year anyway. This is not something that's even an option for you until such time as you hit the 10-year mark.
Yeah.
So.
Sorry, there was no fault in when the idea came.
I understand.
I was just lamenting the reality of the brain.
Yeah,
That's
I
all.
just want to make sure the public understood.
Yeah,
that.
no, ideas come when ideas come.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Rob?
I think we, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, it's all good. Yeah, I have a few thoughts about it. I understand and to some degree agree that using this money to pay off a debt that we're paying 5.5% or more on would make sense. But I think what makes more sense is using this money for the long-term plan, which would be more of a pay-as-you-go. So rather than having the 10 years that we've already paid on this bond, for the next thing we do over the next few years, you know, the next road improvement or whatever it happens to be, that would save the town more money over the long haul than, although it seems like all this money, $700,000 over 5 years, it would be that much more. So that would be the long-term plan that I would like to see, or part of the long-term plan being that we have this money to use instead of looking for the next bond. Part of that is, as to some degree has been mentioned, we don't know what the future holds, what the rates are going to be in 5 years. We would like to achieve steady taxes. I think part of that is not looking to go into future bonds. I think we'd be more likely to achieve steady taxes or steady increases that aren't unreasonable. The idea of living paycheck to paycheck as a town, because we don't have so many $1 million in this reserve, is not a comfortable feeling. And you know, it's worth noting, as was noted, but just simply put, there's two big problems this year that led to this. We have a new garbage and recycling contract for the next 3 years that increases every year to our budget by about $250,000, a little under. Also, we had our largest taxpayer fight their taxes and win, which over 3 years will take effect. So we're in year 2 of that. Naturally, if we were to choose option A, it's going to be tough again next year. So we're going to be up against the wall again. I just have trouble, you know, if you told me, well, I have trouble using that money in the first place, like, as I said, but we're still gonna have an increase in taxes if we use that money. It's not like we're not, because taxes are gonna go up about $50. So the $75 difference in how much the taxes go up, I don't think is worth living paycheck to paycheck on. That's my opinion. I understand the logic between B, and I also agree with the sentiment that even though we did have some amount of time to think about this, it's a hard one to swallow. I've put a lot of time into it on my own, just kind of like, what really should we do here? And those are my thoughts. I lean towards A, unfortunately. And you know how I feel about raising taxes, because if you watch, you see that I voted against last year's, which is almost half of that tax increase. So those are my thoughts.
This is a tough year for taxes for the state of New Jersey, as well as New York and Maryland. But it's not here that the problem is. It's basically, the pain is coming from our federal tax reform, which was a big giveaway to corporations and millionaires, which is really affecting, if anyone's done their taxes, thousands of dollars, or people are taking a hit with thousands of dollars, not $100. I agree that the money that we have in this fund keeps our rates lower going forward. Also, John Spear brought up at the last meeting that the community might have wanted to do something else with this money, maybe have a community center. Maybe the parish center could be purchased with this money and turned into a performing arts, recreation, senior center. But the communities had no opportunity to give us any of their input on how they would like to see us move with this decision, because it was laid out at a very late date. Since either option raises taxes for our residents, in my opinion, it serves the community better to wait till next year to make this decision and let them have the input they deserve, since this is their money.
When you look at the community center, the other thing that I distributed to all of you are some costs for a similar community center. I use the library as an example, because that's good. And I took out the costs for any labor associated. All I took was the actual physical cost to heat and to put electric and so forth. The problem with option A is you could not increase your budget easily to afford. You could buy a community center. You could buy you physically, because there's two separate budgets. There's capital and there's operating expenses. You could physically buy the building, but you couldn't afford to heat it. You couldn't afford to staff it. You couldn't afford to, because while you're paying this debt down, you couldn't increase your budget to allow for those expenditures to pay for all of those things. So if in fact you're looking to do a community center, and we've talked about ways that we could do that, if we don't do something to reduce the debt in the next 5 years, you're not going to be able to increase your O&E large enough without burdening the taxpayers to pay for it, to actually physically run the building. And that's why I sent you that spreadsheet as an example of what it actually costs to run. Because the library is a great example of what, it's a similar size to the parish center. I took the labor out because they have a lot of librarians and things like that you might not need with a rec center. But having said that, keep in mind, this gives you the option B gives you the opportunity to plug in O&E so that you can afford to build that community center, so that you can afford to staff it, heat it, air condition it, fix it, plow the parking lots, and so forth. So yeah, we did send you all of that in the packet.
Right.
So.
Thank you for thinking to do that. It was helpful. It was, I could pull it up. I want to say it was about $80,000 a year.
For the heat and the
all in.
electric, yeah.
Yeah, just so that people know like the numbers that we're talking about, so we're not being vague, and it was broken out in terms of all the different types of costs, so it was helpful to have that parallel.
Right.
Sure.
No, the mayor's calling you out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. It seems like retiring debt and that kind of interest and having that kind of burden retired, it seems like very clear and a no-brainer. And maintaining our bond rating, and still having the ability to reborrow at a much lower rate. And I'm not gonna get into a whole debate about the economy and rates, where they go, instead of just, keep kicking the can of the debt down the road. I'm very uncomfortable with cutting services. Things have been cut back to the bare bones as it is. So, it seems, option B is the way to go. It gives us it gives us some time and comfort and, time to explore other options, so.
I really can't add much to what Sean just said. I have to agree with him. It seems to me that B is the only way to go. The manager, the CFO are in favor of it. And at this point, since it's my last term, I would definitely go along with B.
Joe? Passing along a $120-something annual tax increase this year with a similar or larger tax increase next year, and going and further increasing, for the next few years, while we have $4 million in the bank, doesn't seem like the right thing to do in my eyes. As far as acting prudently goes and calling this a reserve fund, I think we've had this money since 2014. We haven't done anything with it, primarily because we were focused, this money was kind of, focused towards that Superfund problem, which seems to be clearing itself up, and we're gonna be towards the end of that. Hopefully by the end of this year, we'll have a record of decision out on that, and we'll be moving on. But leaving that money in the bank, just paying off this bond here, putting $120 on every one of our taxpayers, while Lakeland is gonna put another $90 a year on every taxpayer. I haven't seen what Ringwood schools have come up with. Hopefully the county will be mercifully flat. I really think they took their pound of flesh out of us earlier on, and they don't need to come back up here with more tax increases.
They're not increasing.
So what I'm looking for is, move on with option B. It keeps the same suite of services that we're providing. It keeps that steady for the next bunch of years. That's what we are here to do, is give the folks what they're used to expecting out of the borough, and we can maintain that with modest tax increases. That's how we do it. And this is what it takes. That $4 million is not really helping us as much as it could. It's sitting in the bank as a cushion or a reserve or whatever you want to call it. Let's get it out. Let's not tax the people as much as we can tax them. There's no reason for that. Let's just take that money, retire this debt, move on in the standard method that we've been moving on and taking care of the budget now for years. We can maintain this, maintain the services and the tax rates at relatively, tax rates at a low level, the services are high. This is all good. I can't see leaving that money in the bank. So yeah, I'd like to make a motion if I could, that was the last thing I had to go? Yes.
Okay.
Can I make a motion that we adopt option B as set forth by the borough manager and as provided at our places this evening? And we introduce that budget tonight?
Second.
And with, I'll just add to it.
Yeah, please,
some
the,
technical
the
points
next-
that it be published as Suburban Trends of the Bergen Record in the issue of April 7, 2019. That the governing body have a public hearing on the budget on May 21, 2019 at 7:30 PM at the municipal building.
Second.
Roll call.
One,
Wait a minute.
Yeah, Mayor, I just want you to remember from the last PowerPoint that you're still leaving a $984,000 balance in that account. And should you choose to, in next year's budget and each budget thereafter, next year's budget, interest and principal that you will have freed up is $667,000 $72.50 that you could put back in there, and you could do that each year, should you choose to.
Well, can we do a motion to,
You can't
Put that
bond
money
future,
back in?
unfortunately, you can't bind future councils, but that's something that the future councils can do if they so choose to. And I would certainly recommend that they either put some of that money back into that fund, or I would recommend that they use it as a pay-as-you-go and use it to help fund your capital program, which this gives you the ability to do either of those. That program gives you the most flexibility. You can use it as a budget relief, you can use it for a capital improvement fund, or you can refund it and you're actually paying yourself 5.5% interest instead of the half interest that you're getting on it right now. So, I'm sorry, I'll stop talking. What's that?
How can we make it a little more?
You can't bind future councils, but that's something that whoever's on the finance committee next year on the council, they can do that. This will give them the flexibility to do that.
Can we pass a resolution?
You can, but it's not.
It's not binding.
It's not binding, because you can't bind a future council.
Official advice to the future.
Okay.
More wish casting.
Mayor Martucci?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Noonan?
Yes.
Council members Bolton?
No.
Davison?
Yes.
Moretti?
No.
O'Keefe?
no,
Yes.
Spear? Passed four.
Mayor, the next item on the agenda, is the last item on the agenda, it is, we talked about adding this to tonight's list, the Highlands Lake Management Grant. Kathy and I talked about it. We spoke with the Highlands Council as well, and they're sending us some guidelines for how we can write the request and how we can write the grant. And what Kathy and I are considering doing, meaning Kathy, the health
Kathy or
officer.
Karen?
Oh, okay.
Kathy, the health officer.
right, no.
Okay.
I was a
Was
little
that- it
confused by that.
It would be, I'm sorry, Kathy, the health officer, she would be managing the grant. We were very interested in the septic management plan, which we've told you about. We also are interested in looking at the streams. We're going to include the lakes in some capacity, though some lakes want to be in, some lakes don't. So we're gonna structure that to see how we can do that, and to look at what the costs might be. Keep in mind, we do have to figure out how we're gonna fund it in the interim. You know, as we talked about at the last meeting, I think we can do that with, depending upon where it falls. If it falls towards the end of the year, it becomes problematic. If it's in the middle of the year, we can encumber money through my budget and then have to replace that, but Debbie has to certify funds are available. So the little nuance about how we can finance that is,
Well-
and what the swing time is something we have to
Kathy,
look at.
you said West Milford is doing
West
something?
Milford, yeah. When we talked to Carrie Green at Cupsaw, I think you were at that meeting, she said right now they're working with all 9 of West Milford's lakes to help them manage it and to set up a program for them.
So maybe we can all ask
Well,
what
I
type
got an
of,
email today from the Highlands giving us some outlines of how we might be able to write the grant. How we fund it is something different, and Debbie and I will work through that. So we'll work through that.
In West Milford, is there a lake association that they're working with directly, or they're going through the borough?
We didn't get into the weeds of how they're doing it, but one of the biggest concerns of the lake communities here in Ringwood, Erskine, Skyline, and Cupsaw that were at the meeting, was would it make the public, the private lakes public? And that was some misinformation that was given that had them very concerned. And it turns out Kerry cleared that up for everybody. There is no obligation. In fact, she sent me an email here that the distinction you mentioned between private and publicly owned water bodies is not pertinent in the funding of resource management planning for municipalities and identifying issues. The Highlands is specifically concerned about water quality, and water knows no boundaries. Therefore, they're concerned with all of the aquifer and not with whether your lake is private or public. They're here to protect the lakes, whether they're private or public.
the main concern was that she would possibly be sharing information with the DEP or EPA. And the concern was, would they come down the road and say, okay, you have to build a berm here, 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 here. and cause an unanticipated expense. That was.
I think that was
also-
Erskine's concern afterwards. As you know, at the meeting we had, all the lakes voted unanimously to go for this lake management grant. And the Highlands have a great grant funding available, and like we talked about, it's not just for the lake management, it's also for sustainable economic development, Highlands redevelopment, Highlands center planning, green building and environmental and sustainability planning, housing element and fair share plan, municipal master. There's so many options that we could go for. I find it a little surprising that this isn't something we've done previously with the Highlands. Look for more funding to find economic opportunities to solve the issues that we're experiencing here in Ringwood.
Because what Carrie said prior was they had to go through the state. This is the first time they have money on their own that they're able to offer just Highland Council grants.
Well, when she wrote to me, she said the grant program is rolling with no closure window. We work with towns and counties on a continual basis upon request to assist with planning initiatives. The Economic and Environment Sustainability Grant Program works in the same manner. We have an allocation each year from the state for our grant programs, and our approach is to respond when asked to fund a project or initiative.
Does it come from DEP?
This is what, it says from the state, it doesn't say specifically where.
Yeah, keep in mind, the reason that people are very concerned about private lakes versus public and public funds are because the example that we had last year or 2 years ago right here in Ringwood, and there was all kinds of articles written about it on the whole state of New Jersey. Most communities have used state green acres for their ball fields over the years. They used it to fund their fields, and they went through these programs, and some of it was a loan program, some of it was a grant program. We had the same very problem. Private organizations found the loophole where they would say it was paid for with state green acres funds, therefore it is eligible for anybody to use. And they were calling towns and they were just scheduling, I'm using this field on this day because green acres funds went into it. As you folks all know, this became problematic because our programs use the fields day in and day out, and it was a problem. And we had somebody who came and actually did that here as well. We passed an ordinance so that we could manage that, so that we put fees in there and charges in there, so our folks came first. See, as soon as you put government money into a private entity, it changes that structure a little bit. I am concerned, and I'm gonna look at the legal review, that once the borough of Ringwood writes a check, where we're getting reimbursed from is immaterial. Once we write a check that benefits a private lake, how does that affect the people that are not benefiting from that lake? So there is a little bit of a legal structure. I think we can get through it, how Kathy and I, the health officer Kathy and I can't pronounce her last name, that's why I'm just calling her that.
Kathy, the health officer.
Well, anyway,
Okay.
we're gonna move forward.
We're gonna move forward, but how we're gonna handle it is, we're worried about what's going into the lakes. As I said, the Highlands protected the vacant properties. We're gonna protect the streams and the septics so that we can help the lakes, and we're gonna do it under the guise of, we're looking to see what's ultimately ending up there, and that's kinda how I think we're gonna get around it. So, anyway, that's,
And I would imagine we could obviously offer it to all of the lakes, and if
All.
anybody wants to opt out, then they just don't
Correct.
participate. And then once we have, and knock on wood, we get whatever it is we request, if there's any amount to the annual limit, because I think it's not a grant limit, I think it's just each town $50,000 per year.
The grant is 50,000.
It's a rolling fund, so whoever applies first, it goes to whatever town.
And if we need I meant like each town could get, like, if we needed 50 for this, then that would be our shot. If we
we
only
have
needed
several different
25.
buckets, it's not only the 50, there's several
Yeah.
different buckets there. We've used some of it for our planning incentives. We've used the Highlands grants for the planning board and for studies, and we've used those grants for those type of things in the past, for design work and that kind of thing. So, and I'm sure we will do that again, but there are other categories that we can use that have different dollar amounts in them.
Okay. Attorney's report?
No report.
A report? Okay. Second public session, anyone want to come up?
Lincoln Tall, 24 High Point Lane. First of all, with the Green Acres and the ball fields, the state of New Jersey owns all our ball fields. The borough doesn't own them. They're owned by Green Acres. So, yes, they are open to the public because of that, but I don't think it's really a problem in Ringwood. But we don't own our ball fields. I was shocked when I found that out. But they're owned by Green Acres. So it's really not comparable to the lake management grant at all, and I doubt that the state of New Jersey is going to make our private lakes public. The lake management grant, contrary to what we talked about at the last meeting, Mayor, has been available since 2008. It's written into the law. The Highlands Act is the law of the state of New Jersey. The funding, the application, if you look up here, there's a lake management plan guidance, how you could fill it out. Has all the information in here right on the webpage. And it's the law, so all of this funding has been going on since 2008, and you have not been taking advantage of it, unfortunately. The 5.5% interest on the loans, on the bonding that you're paying off, that is something that was locked in. That percentage, usually it fluctuates yearly, how the interest rates are. You know, some years, you know, when maybe you applied for it, it was a flexible rate, which happens a lot of times when you apply for mortgages. You get a lower rate, but it goes up or it could go down, so you're throwing the dice. So I'm just wondering if what you're planning to pay off is a flexible or a locked-in 5.5%. Locked in? Yeah. Okay. Also, I'm confused because I don't know, you were never concerned about bonding. In these last 10 years, you've bonded for $10 million, and it's an issue in the water budget because your debt service is extremely high. So now all of a sudden, you're going to take this $4.5 million that you got from Ford for agreeing to their demands on the Superfund site. And I'm sure you realize, I don't know if you were at the last CAG meeting, but the reservoir, the North Jersey Water District, has sent their comments to the EPA in response to the Ford Borough feasibility study about the groundwater and the mines and the shaft, and they don't agree with anything that's in the feasibility study that Cornerstone/Ford has put out, and it's going to be a problem. So what I worry about is, I know you received $2.2 million when you agreed to the broad general release for Ford in the term sheets, 2013. Then you agreed to cap, build a recycling center, return the old recycling center to the community, and support monitored natural attenuation for the groundwater, which I think could present a problem to the borough. Because if you're locked in with Ford that you agree to monitored natural attenuation, and then you decide that you're going to agree with what the reservoir is saying, which is they want to pump and treat at the shaft. They want to pump, treat the water. That's where all the contamination is, 1,4-dioxane. And it's really deep. It's really deep in the shaft. So, and a lot of the test wells up there are not as deep as they should be, and they're not might not be catching the groundwater plume that's up there. I mean, the groundwater is contaminated. So I worry about you using at least the $2.5 million because it could come back to bite you if, in fact, this groundwater, our ROD, Record of Decision, is not what you have agreed upon with Ford. And Ford is is tough to deal with. And if you sign this term sheet, you're going to agree with monitored natural attenuation, which means only really you're going to wait, watch, and see what happens at the groundwater, which has been going on for 50 years anyway, and there's been no dispersion of the what's the word I'm looking for? But the levels of contamination have not really gone down in 50 years. So it could be 50 years, 100 years, or whatever before that groundwater up there is potable, and that's a problem. So that's what I would worry about, because you're using money that is that you received for agreeing for certain things, and that might not happen because the reservoir is pretty powerful, and I think the EPA is going to listen to them. The other, yeah, okay. I would just ask the council to contact the NJDEP. You could contact Ken Petrone, because I understand, I asked at the last CAG meeting, natural resource damages is not in the consent decree, and it is clear that we have natural resource damage up there, definitely in our groundwater. The aquifer is contaminated. So if you write to him, he would like to hear from you, and that you're interested in going after damage claims for all the natural resource damages that have occurred at the site. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, evening. Peter Sando, 24 High Point Lane. Scott mentioned that he had an elderly resident come in and say that she watched the meetings on TV and was looking for information about various things. And so, I don't mean to be a nag, but I know last meeting I asked if for those of us who don't have Channel 77, if you could reinstitute your policy of putting the meetings on the YouTube channel, and also to have a link from the borough website to the YouTube channel. So I didn't hear any response to me. I'm hoping that you took that suggestion, because
We're looking at a few things.
working on it.
Yeah.
Okay, because there's nothing from 2019 on there. You did really well up until the end of 2018, but you know, some of these issues like tonight's meeting, where I'm sure that you proponents of the ratables chase would like to have your opinions on channels on the YouTube channel. And speaking of that, I gotta say that ratables chase is an old story, and you should really do your research on it, because it just doesn't work. And that's not an opinion, that's a fact. Thank you.
I saw something this week that looked promising. I mentioned to Scott, I was at a company-wide meeting, and they televised 2 different locations, and it was something set up through Google, and it was a live transmission, and at the same time had the ability to save the video that could be broadcast.
Yeah, I'm sure that we have those files. I mean, we always have, because like last year when right after the election, they stopped putting the meetings on YouTube, and you know, later on they said they had technical difficulties, but they did all go up. So as long as you have the file, you can always convert it to the right. You can convert it in iMovie, you know, and pop it up on YouTube. I do it with the CAG meetings. So it's rather, you know, to have the residents at the click of a mouse be able to watch a council meeting at their leisure, not when it's scheduled on, is even better than Channel 77, you know. It may not be a lot of views, but, you know, if it's 40 or 50, that's a good thing, and it wouldn't take a lot of time, I don't believe. You can consult with Tracy about that. I know she's advised me on it, and, you know, it's pretty easy, so. Okay. Hope you can do it. I'd like to see that. Thank you.
Mayor, I know you've shared that same sentiment, and maybe once we get through some of these budget evenings that we keep having, we can focus on that.
Okay. Members of the council.
One motion for exec to close the public.
Oh, motion to close public.
Seeing no one else, motion to close public.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Mayor Martucci?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Noonan?
Yes.
Councilmembers Bolton?
Yes.
Davison?
Yes.
Moretti?
Yes.
O'Keefe?
Yes.
Spear?
Yes.
Just one thing really quick. First of all, EPA has signed the consent decree, so that has been an executed document. I received that yesterday. Also, relative to the M&A, the Borough of Ringwood, there is no resolution from the council which authorized their support of the M&A remedy for the groundwater at the site. Therefore, the council could not have contractually been obligated to the borough to support only an M&A remedy for the groundwater in the November 13th term sheet with Ford. Also, in that same term sheet, if you read down further, it says, in the last paragraph, the borough has the right to express any disagreement publicly, either verbally or in writing, and the same shall not constitute a breach or a failure to comply with any provision of the second term sheet. Mr. Bolton asked these questions of our attorney, and she sent us some information relative to that. So, so we have not in any way endorsed a groundwater remedy at this point, and it does not in any way tie us to that particular remedy. If in fact the term sheet is, if we have a different opinion, we can certainly voice it. So, and it made that very clear in the term sheet. It's further down in, I think it's paragraph 5.
Speaking of the water, back, I think it was January or February, Joanne Atlas, the chairperson of the Environmental Commission, had come to this council and had requested that we do a groundwater feasibility study because they didn't trust Cornerstone Engineering and what they have found, and now we're hearing that pump and treat might be the way to go. You said you were going to meet with her independently. I was wondering where we are with that, because I was at that meeting and it was almost unanimous that the Environmental Commission recommended that we do further study on this.
I have met with the chairman, Joanne Atlas, from the Environmental Commission. As you know, she was in Vietnam for a month, so that stalled for a little bit. But in her absence, while she was away, we talked about a contractor that may be an option. I have spoken with the contractor. She has submitted a proposal to me as of last week. I'm reviewing the proposal, and I'll have something for you at the next council meeting. It's not on tonight's agenda, so I didn't bring it forward, but I'll be distributing that to all of you folks going forward. So.
Okay, anything else, Kathy?
Oh,
Since you're
really?
talking.
I just wanted to follow up on the water, but yeah, if you want me to go ahead. I do want to say that it is a tough year for New Jersey with taxes. Everyone's aware of that. It's not just New Jersey, it's New York, it's Maryland. It's all of the northern states. Somebody called it a tax civil war. We're being taxed terribly by the federal government. Our money is being sent to the southern states. It's unjust, it's unfair. And we need to let the federal government know that we won't stand for it. I think that they are looking into a lawsuit to fight this because it is unfair, it is unjust, and it's causing residents of New Jersey to leave in record numbers because people aren't able to survive in the northern states under these onerous conditions put upon us by the federal government. I think that every citizen should stand up and take notice. If you've done your taxes, you've been hit. My family's been hit hard. I think other families are feeling the same pain we are. So I urge you to get involved, to stand up and let your representatives know down at the federal level that these taxes aren't fair and unjust. Thank you.
All right, I think we also need help in the state of New Jersey with fellow Democrats, so there's equitable distribution of aid, because they just read it in the record or the Suburban Trends today, and they're reallocating more funds to schools and more of the southern counties. And what's happening is we need somebody to go to the bat for us.
There was a
Okay.
formula under the state of New Jersey for school funding, and it had to do with how many pupils were in each school. Governor Chris Christie stopped using that formula, And like the federal government, he gave a big tax break to millionaires and corporations, just like the federal government did. It underfunded our schools. The state is trying to replace that funding, but the fact that the formula wasn't followed for the last 8 years when Chris Christie was in office, it did negatively affect some of the communities. And hopefully we'll get past that hurdle soon. And I know we like to talk about the county. In the last 3 years, this council has raised taxes every time, and the county has not. They've only raised taxes once in the past 3 years. They've kept their budget solid and straight without an increase, and that's again this year. So, yeah, I think we have to look at the fact that the middle class is getting hit with tax breaks for corporations and for millionaires, and it's hitting the middle class, and it's just unfair and unjust.
The county taxes are significant, and
And they haven't been raised.
no, but
No.
they're a significant part of our budget that we send down. Plus the services we get are poor. We had to plow their roads. We had to do numerous services this past winter because they did not come up to Ringwood. Scott, you could better talk to them. I
You
can't.
know, folks, we're getting beyond, this is a special meeting, and there was an agenda,
Okay.
a specific
I just
agenda.
gave my
This was not on the
comments.
agenda.
All right, I'm sorry.
That was approved at the, I don't mean to cut off debate, but the rules are, the special meeting has a notice that sets forth what the agenda is. I'm just saying these items weren't on the agenda.
If you can make a phone call or whatever, it'd be helpful.
Mr. Counselor, are you suggesting that they have to stick to the topics on the agenda in the mayor and council?
The law is suggesting it.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I caused some of that by answering a question.
Right. Good.
I was gonna promote the haircut-a-thon it's part of the agenda, and it would help our services for fire and ambulance, but,
I didn't hear anything.
It's budget related.
I mean, if you happen to show up at Magic Touch tomorrow afternoon and get your hair cut,
There you
but
go. There you go.
drive nicely,
John?
be kind.
Real quick, my impression of the school funding formula was that it wasn't followed. Now that it's followed, it turns out that the Borough of Ringwood is funded beyond adequacy. Therefore, we're losing funding, and that loss of funding is coming down in the next 7 years. Same thing with Lakeland. They're funded above adequacy according to that state funding formula that just recently got. And that's my understanding of it. I was just confused. Hopefully, we can clear this up in the next couple weeks.
Well, I don't have a report, but I do have a statement. The St. Patrick's Day Parade Committee, or parade this year, was an outstanding, successful event. And we thank the residents for participating the way they did. It was outstanding.
Thank the
Thank you.
parade committee for doing it.
And Lakeside Diner did a great job with providing the food.
With the
down there.
breakfast.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. Sure. Progress. So, the parade was great. Food at the breakfast was great. And the amount of people that turned out along the parade route was remarkable. There was cars parked in certain sections the night before the whole spots to themselves. So it was a good day for the parade.
And regarding the budget and the community center, the library had an awesome day with, I think they had like 800 people went through the library with different programs that day on St. Patrick's Day, Parade Day. And it's just another example of some of the things that they do above and beyond that people are participating in, and they use it. They had their highest number of participants that day ever.
Do we have another rug cleaning this budget?
Yes.
Okay, can I get a motion?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Ferretti.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I don't have much. I just want
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sir, it's all good.
I'm
Don't worry.
sorry.
Special thank you, Debbie. I don't know if they've ever prepared 2 budgets before, but we definitely did this year, and I appreciate that. Scott as well, thank you very much for all your insight and work that you do. Sick or not, thank you. I look forward to working with everybody and making a long-term plan. And I do hope part of that is self-funding the reserve account to grow it again. And I'm glad that we move forward, or we are moving forward with the lake grants. That's all.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call?
Mayor Martucci?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Noonan?
Yes.
Councilmembers Bolton?
Yes.
Davison?
Yes.
Moretti?
Yes.
O'Keefe?
Yes.
Spear?
Yes.